Hi, guys, and welcome back to another episode of Women in Math and STEM, where our mission is to reach out to as many professionals, aspiring professionals, students, whatever you name it. We try to reach out to them, who essentially support the initiative of bringing more women and young girls into the STEM field. So, with that being said, as always, feel free to open up the description or transcript to better follow along, and I hope you enjoyed this episode. Hello, and thank you so much for coming to this call today and talking with me. Just to sort of start off, do you mind walking us through both your academic and personal journey that sort of got you where you are today?
Absolutely. So I grew up in New York City and got really interested in math from an early age because of math that I did with my father, who's a mathematician. And that was just a really unique experience of kind of growing up with this almost parallel math education to what I was getting in school. And so I went on to get really interested in math competitions and participated in national math competitions such as Math Counts and USAMO. And as I went on to college. I came here to Boston to attend Harvard and just became really interested in the fact that throughout that whole journey, I was one of the only girls in math. We'll talk a lot about that in this podcast. And in order to try and think about, all of the inequities in education, I stumbled upon what I considered to be my true passion, math education. And I've approached that from several different angles in my career. I've worked in education technology, I have worked as a classroom teacher, and now I work as a tutor, and I have the opportunity to work one-on-one with students on math.
I think you mentioned that you did many math competitions, and it seemed like you were really successful in them. Do you have any sort of general tips and tricks when it comes to studying or like learning math or like just any subject?
I think that the key is consistency. So to continue to work through all of the competitions have a lot of older materials and tests, and to continue to work through those um, was something that I did a lot of, and also to find communities of like-minded people who are also maybe studying for similar competitions. And so I was lucky to have attended a school, Hunter High School in New York City, where there were a lot of like-minded students. And so I think we actually pushed each other to be better, if that makes sense. Sort of friendly competition.
And I think you also mentioned that sort of when you started studying math or like throughout your like math journey, you realized there were a lot of inequities when it comes to like different people in math. I was just wondering how your like involvement in I think Harvard University's gender inclusion in math as well as working with math prize for girls, how you sort of work to address those inequities and inequalities.
Absolutely. So I'll start with Gender Inclusivity in Math, which is an organization that I founded as a Harvard student, an undergraduate student. And it started with a survey. So before there was a club, we were actually interested in understanding what is the source of the problem, because there are a couple of different there were a couple of hypotheses. So there's, one hypothesis that was being floated around at the time, particularly by a lot of men, was that there was a quote pipeline problem, which means that there were, and makes me a little bit upset to even talk about it this way, but the idea that there just were not enough female students at Harvard who were qualified to study math. And we really believed that that was not the case. And so, in order to show that it wasn't actually a pipeline problem, but that it was actually a um, cultural problem within the Harvard math department, we sent out a survey to all undergraduates, not just women, but all, and then looked at things like how comfortable do you feel in this environment? How many professors would you ask for a letter of recommendation? That sort of thing to understand really levels of comfort. And then that sparked a lot of interest. The results of that survey sparked a lot of interest and debate among my peers, which then became the sort of catalyst for the club itself. So that was one way that and the club was not just about community, but it was also about advocacy, about actually making changes to the institution that we were in.
And then I think you mentioned you also enjoy like tutoring students, especially like being with them like during their aha moment. I just wanted to ask what were like what were some of your most favorite moments when it came to like working with younger students?
Absolutely. I think that one aha moment that I'll share had to do with a uh, open problem, so a problem that has not even been solved. And I was able to expose to state the problem is not that hard. I'm not going to do it on this podcast, but it has to do with it's called Ramsey theory. And so in Ramsey theory, there is the first few numbers are known, and then it turns out that if you go to just the fifth one, that is an open problem. And so to talk about this with students and uh, really sparked their imagination. And I think that and that was an example with younger students.
And then sort of on the same note, like I think I know math can be sort of like a challenging, difficult, and like frustrating subject. How do you sort of encourage and like allow your students to achieve their full potential without being like frustrated or discouraged or like trying to give up?
That is a really great question. I think that particularly in my tutoring work, the way that I get students to not give up is to have them just do it, if that makes sense. So they might feel intimidated by solving a problem, and then I'll ask them some questions about the problem. And just by asking them questions, no answers, they will soon have solved the problem. And so I think that and so maybe I've helped them by breaking down the problem a little bit. But that ultimately, I think that students often have the tools that they need in order to solve a problem, and that it's just the maybe a confidence issue getting in their way, particularly for female students, which we can talk more about.
And then sort of on that note, how do you encourage particularly female students who feel discouraged or maybe like that they don't belong in this space to sort of stay in there and keep going?
I think that remembering that you can only compare yourself to your past self, that looking at other people and looking around is not helpful. And so I think that to see progress requires putting in that consistent effort. And so I also think that making sure that the problem, again, particularly in tutoring, it's if a problem is exactly the right level where it's like challenging, but it's not impossible. If we have a level of problem that's just right, then I think that students will react positively.
That makes sense. I was also just curious since you've done like a lot of different things in terms of math. Like how does doing math competitions sort of differ from studying math at university, like different from sort of teaching math and being in math education?
That's a great question. I would say that doing math competitions is like your brain is in problem solving mode every day, at every moment. And it's a really special feeling. And I think it's that most careers do not involve that sort of thinking every moment of every day. There's always going to be parts of your job or career that are a little bit less interesting. However, in my career in math education, I do still get to use that part of my brain, particularly when it comes to thinking about problem sequencing and problem writing. So if I'm trying to write a problem that, again, gets right at that sweet spot for a student that's not too hard or not too easy, and then think about, okay, well, they don't know how to do this exponential growth problem. What are all of the skills involved in that? Well, they need to know their exponent rules. Maybe they need to understand word problems. So I think breaking something down and thinking about how it both math teaching and math competitions have the same quality of, I think, taking something hard and breaking it down into its essential components, because those essential components feel simple once you see the result. So good teaching makes it look easy. Good teaching is like, oh, well, that's simple. And same with looking at a solution to a math competition problem.
And sort of on that note, I was wondering, because you offer tutoring services, how your service is sort of different from others, or how you specifically tailor your services like to your students to help them achieve their full potential.
Absolutely. That's a great question. So I think that I do bring a combination of skills that is rare in math tutoring, particularly because I have advanced math experience along with classroom teaching experience. So I feel that not only can I, be right there with you in the advanced math, but also I understand how to best break it down and teach it. My goal is to for you to achieve your best work, which means that I want to be the best teacher. And I think that what was the second part of the question?
Sort of like how you allow your students to achieve their full potential and how sort of your skill set differs from other people who offer math tutoring services.
Gotcha. So yeah, I think that pretty much covers it. And that, oh, and the other piece being, I customize things to students because um, in order to meet them where they're at. So if you think about, there's an entire set of things that you know and you don't know, and I'm really trying to, I think every individual is unique in that. So I really care about my work. So I spend a lot of time, not just in the session, but outside of the session, thinking about what are, the right sequence of problems for you. And that also means putting together, depending on what subject, it could also mean putting together a customized plan or syllabus for you over the course of your journey. So that is something that I do as well. And so sometimes students are looking to go beyond what they're currently doing in math class, in which case that's where the customized syllabus comes in.
Wow, that honestly sounds really amazing. I haven't really heard of like tutoring services that like tailor the curriculum to the students. It's usually always like you follow the set curriculum that's pre-written. So I think that's really cool. And then
Absolutely.
I was just also wondering if you had any pieces of advice, recommendations, resources, honestly anything for students, but particularly young women who are interested in pursuing math, STEM, or like math education in the future.
Absolutely. I think that there are a number of opportunities. I know Math Prize for Girls was recommended already, but I feel that I must plug it. It's a phenomenal, it's not just a competition, but a community. So that's one resource. There are so many other resources for girls in math and in STEM. I think I won't even try to name them all, but I think that the biggest thing that you can do as a girl in STEM, because that's still maybe not going um, to solve the problem on its own, right? And so what we can do is we can support one another and create our own communities. So, for example, at Math Prize for Girls, we've seen a lot of Math Prize for Girls contestants starting their own clubs and competitions for younger women. So there are a lot of initiatives to support one another, and so I like that idea of mutual support.
And then I was just wondering if you had any last pieces of advice, words of wisdom, anything to share with our audience.
Yeah, I would say that the vision that I have for the future is not that 100% of women are studying math. I think my vision is for a world where you can be anything that you want. And so I see that, and I think we're on the way, but not there yet. And so what I mean by this is that if you're a woman studying STEM, I think that there can be a lot of pressure to feel like you are a token, that you are representing all other women. And so and so I think to achieve the goal of women not being tokens, we need to achieve a critical mass of women in STEM and women in math. So that's why there are so many initiatives. But I do not want to be saying, okay, well, all women should go study math or STEM. I think it's easy for that to be missed among all of those initiatives that are out there.
Okay, thank you so much for coming today and sharing your experience. It was absolutely phenomenal. Thank you.
Thank you so much.